I'm sorry, I thought we were going to go through all the languages. The reading today is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. May we open our hearts and minds to the reading of these words. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. People do not light a lamp and put it under the bushel basket. Rather, they put it on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly, I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. May we be granted wisdom and courage for interpretation.
So I want to set the scene for you. Jesus was gathered with his newly chosen 12 on top of a mountain. A crowd of others had followed them. Now remember, when mountains or hills are mentioned in the Bible, something important is going to happen. It's the code language. So Jesus began speaking only after he was seated. This was also code language because rabbis always delivered their important messages after they were seated. We see this tradition even today when the Pope gives a message, ex cathedra, meaning with the full authority of the church, the Pope is always seated. And so by giving these well-known symbols of the day, Matthew, who was the gospel writer most concerned with teaching, reminded his readers to pay attention to what was going to be said. Now, some call this long sermon in Matthew the disciples' ordination sermon. It set forth who God was, what the laws were, what Jesus saw in his disciples, and what gifts were bestowed upon his followers, what was expected of the disciples when they lived in the ways of Jesus' teaching. And the section we're focusing on today follows the section called the Beatitudes. And these were 8 statements of blessedness that turned the world on its head. Now, the English word blessed is really inadequate. The author of Matthew used the word makarios. The Greeks called Cyprus ho makaria. This island was so beautiful and fertile and brimming with natural resources that they thought that no one would ever need to leave its shores to find a perfect life. All that was necessary for an abundant, beautiful, perfect life was provided. This is what makarios, or blessed, means in the Beatitudes. It's a joy that is not determined by happenstance, by luck, by inheritance, by ambition. by intelligence. It is a serene, untouchable, and perfect, fulfilling way of life. So after the disciples learn that a life in the way of God, that there is a life of Makarios, even in grief, even in persecution, there is this life of abundant joy, even when they are spiritually empty. Jesus tells his disciple then that they are salt and that they are light. Listen to this scripture from Eugene Peterson's para-translation of the Bible, The Message. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house and be generous with your lives. Salt and light were both precious commodities in Jesus' time. On a side note, if you ever want to get lost down a seemingly internet library and internet rabbit hole, just look up the history of salt. It's really fascinating. Salt can't lose its flavor. Salt is salt. Sodium chloride is sodium chloride. Light cannot be anything but light. It either is or it isn't. To his new disciples, Jesus tells them, if you really are a follower of mine, be salt, be light, be essential to the world, be authentic through and through. If you're not, then you're not a follower. Often people think of an ordination as a culmination of something. I mean, it is, in our traditions, the end of a particular degree. It's the end of a process of interviews and multiple supervised ministry settings, the end of reviewed papers of perhaps CPE. And then once all that is finished, ordination is bestowed. But ordination is really the beginning. You've completed the requirements and people have prayed for a blessing on you. They've noticed particular skills and talents. But are you salt? Are you light? Salt adds flavor. Salt preserves. Salt is a natural antibiotic. Salt is salt. It's nothing else. Light illuminates. It provides access in the dark, and it provides a warning. Think of lighthouses. Light is light. In fact, in Jesus' time, without artificial lights anywhere, even the tiniest of fires could have been seen for miles. Salt and light, they are authentic. They are what they are. It's simple, really. You may know how to plan. You may know how to speak. You may know how to protest. You may know how to research. But are you salty? And do your actions illuminate? These 7 verses are dense. Because not only do you illuminate, preserve, heal, protect, and warn, but you are to do all this as you point to a God that is grander than anything you could ever describe. After presenting a new way of seeing the world and telling his disciples that to be his followers, they had to be authentic through and through, that to live worthy lives, they were to add flavor and illumination wherever they were planted, he pulls the rug out from under them by saying, don't think for a moment that I'm saying anything new. In fact, I'm not going to take the tiniest apostrophe or serif from any letter of the law. This is so confusing because, well, we all know the story. It seemed that Jesus broke the law over and over. But what was the law? The Jewish people used the expression the law in 4 different ways. 1, they used it to mean the 10 Commandments. 2, they used it to mean the first 5 books of the Bible, that part of the Bible which is known as the Pentateuch, which literally means the 5 rolls. The Pentateuch was to the Jewish people the law par excellence, and was to them by far the most important part of their scriptures. 3, they used the phrase the law and the prophets to mean the whole of Scripture. They used it as a comprehensive description of what we would today call the First Testament. And 4, they used it to mean the oral or the scribal law. In the time of Jesus, it was the last meaning that was commonly used. And it was, in fact, this scribal law which Jesus and Paul so utterly condemned. Each of the 10 Commandments is a great principle out of which a person can find broad rules for life. As Judaism progressed, to some these principles didn't seem to be enough. Since the law was considered divine, surely it should include every aspect of human life. They therefore argued that out of the law, it must be possible to deduce a rule and a regulation for every single possibility in life. So there arose a class of men called the scribes, who made it the business of their lives to reduce the great principles of the law to literally thousands upon thousands of rules and regulations, down to the minutiae of life. When we look at the 10 Commandments, which are the essence and the foundation of all law, we can see that their foundation can be summed up by the words reverence and respect. Reverence for God and for the name of God, reverence for God's day, respect for parents, respect for life, respect for property, respect for personality, respect for the truth, and for one another's good names. Respect for oneself, so that common, base desires may never conquer us. These are the fundamental principles behind the 10 Commandments. Principles of reverence for God and respect for humanity and for ourselves. It is that reverence and that respect that Jesus says he came to fulfill. He came to show people in actual life how reverence for God and respect for people are lived. Plato once said that justice consisted in giving people that which is their due. Jesus came to show what it meant to give God the reverence, to give God the reverence, and to people the respect which are their due. Jesus taught that reverence and respect did not consist in obeying a multitude of what some considered petty rules and regulations that could be constantly changing with the changing of time. They consisted not in judgment, the rules of Jesus, but the laws of Jesus, but in mercy, not in legalism, but in love. Not in prohibitions which demanded that people should not do things, but in the instruction to mold their lives on the positive commandments of love. Fortunately, unfortunately, the message is clear. The law is ancient, it is fundamental to who we are, and the blessing, the Makarios, is essential to who we are. Like sodium and chloride are essential to salt, like oxygen, heat, and fuel are essential to flame. We get confused because this ordination sermon isn't a step-by-step prescriptive guide for life. This is an understanding of a life blessed. This is poetic prose that tells us to be salt where life is bland, salt where life needs preserving, salt when life needs healing, and to be light where life needs illumination, light where life needs warning, light where life needs warming. The great William Sloane Coffin said it best when he said, "There is no way that Christianity can be a spirituality redemptive without being socially responsible. A Christian cannot have a personal conversion experience without experiencing at the same time a change in social attitude." Jesus said, "What you have done unto the poor, the immigrant, the prisoner, the widowed, the orphan, you have done unto me." In saying this, Jesus reminds us that God is always trying to make humanity more human. But without us, God won't do it. Just as without God, we can't do it. So every time we ask ourselves why something isn't better, how long will people live in suffering, in pain, in darkness? How long will people be hateful, selfish, and fearful of one another? We can be assured that God is asking us those very same questions. It's all so simple, really.